She texted from a gym. Oops, missed your operation. Flights are crazy. While I lay under fluorescent lights. A plastic bracelet tightening around my wrist, like a quiet accusation. I stared at the message longer than I should have. Around me, machines hummed in steady, indifferent rhythms. A nurse adjusted my IV without looking me in the eyes. Somewhere down the hall, a monitor flatlined for half a second before snapping back to life. And in that moment, between the silence and the sound, I realized something cold and precise. I'd been alone long before this hospital room. I typed, "Take care." Nothing more, no anger, no questions. Just a clean, polite ending to a sentence she hadn't bothered to finish. Then with the same calm, I asked the front desk to update my file. One name, no visitors allowed. Hours later, when the anesthesia wore off and the pain settled into something dull and manageable, I watched through the half-open door as security stopped her in the hallway. Balloons in hand, smile rehearsed. They already knew her name. And for the first time since the diagnosis, I felt completely in control. I've always been the reliable one, the person people call when something breaks, not when something matters. In every room, I was the background solution, never the center of anyone's concern. With her, it started differently, or at least, that's what I convinced myself. She was loud where I was quiet, spontaneous where I planned 3 steps ahead. I thought we balanced each other. Truth was, I adjusted, and she enjoyed the comfort of never having to. I remembered the small things first, the dinners I waited through while she ran, just 10 minutes late that turned into an hour, the way she'd scroll through her phone while I talked, nodding at the wrong moments, birthdays where my gifts were thoughtful, and hers felt like afterthoughts, if they came at all. But I didn't complain. I told myself love wasn't about keeping score. That patience meant strength. Over time, I became predictable to her, dependable, replaceable. When I got the diagnosis, she held my hand in the doctor's office, tight enough to be seen, not enough to be felt. She said all the right things, promised she'd be there, that I wouldn't face any of it alone. And I believed her, not because she proved it, but because I had spent so long proving it for both of us. After the diagnosis, everything shifted, just not in the way I expected. She became careful, not attentive, careful, like someone managing an inconvenience rather than sharing a burden. When I spoke about treatment schedules, she'd nod, eyes flicking to her phone the second I paused. Once, mid-sentence, she muted me with a soft 1 sec to answer a call that ended in laughter I hadn't heard directed at me in months. At appointments, she always found a reason to step out. Coffee, a call, fresh air. I'd sit alone, watching other patients surrounded by people who leaned in, who listened. When she returned, she'd ask, "All good?" Not waiting long enough to hear the answer. There were smaller things too. The way she introduced me to others became shorter, less personal. "This is him," she'd say, like my name was optional. When friends asked about my condition, she'd speak first, summarizing my experience in neat, dismissive sentences, as if it were a story she'd already grown tired of telling. One evening, I caught her reflection in the window while I spoke. She wasn't looking at me, just checking her own expression, adjusting it into concern. That's when I understood. It wasn't that she didn't care enough. It was that she cared just enough to be seen caring. The message from the gym wasn't the first time. She chose something else over me. But it was the first time I stopped explaining it away. I read it again while lying in that narrow hospital bed. The smell of antiseptic sharp in my throat. "Oops, missed your operation." Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "Are you okay?" Just a shrug disguised as a sentence. I pictured her between sets, typing it out without breaking rhythm, already moving on before I could even respond. For a moment, I almost did what I always did, defend her in my own mind. Flights are hard. Maybe she tried. Maybe I stopped. Because the truth didn't need imagination anymore. It was right there, simple and unpolished. If it mattered to her, she would have been there. The realization didn't feel explosive. No anger, no sudden rush of emotion, just a quiet clarity settling in. Like dust after something breaks. I wasn't angry that she missed the operation. I was done pretending it was an exception, so I sent "take care." Not as forgiveness, but as closure. Then I asked the nurse calmly to update my file. One name, no visitors, and for once, I chose myself without hesitation. I've always handled things quietly, not because I avoid conflict, but because I prefer outcomes over noise. From my hospital bed, I started with the smallest, most controlled decision: access. The no visitor list wasn't about punishment. It was about boundaries, documented, enforced. and no longer dependent on how I felt in the moment. Hospitals are precise places. They follow instructions without emotion. I trusted that. Then I moved outward. During recovery, I had time, more than I'd ever allowed myself before. Time to review the practical parts of my life we'd blurred together. Shared subscriptions, a lease with both our names, a joint savings account we called Future Plans. I contacted the bank first, requesting a temporary freeze that required both signatures for withdrawals. Not dramatic, just protective. Next came the lease. I reread every clause, highlighting exit terms, notice periods, penalties. I scheduled a call with the property manager, asking neutral questions, gathering options without signaling intent. Information first, decisions later. I changed passwords, not out of spite, but because access should match trust. And trust had already shifted. By the time I was discharged, nothing looked different from the outside. No arguments, no confrontations, no scenes, but every piece was in place. For once, my life wasn't reacting to her choices. It was quietly preparing to move without them. She chose a Saturday to show up, late morning, when the halls were quieter and visits felt more personal. I saw her before she saw me, reflected faintly in the glass of the nurse's station. Bright clothes, balloons tied in a careful cluster, that practiced softness already settling onto her face. She walked with confidence, like she still belonged there. Then she reached the desk. The nurse didn't look surprised. She checked the screen, glanced up and gave a small, apologetic shake of her head. A pause followed, the kind that stretches just enough to make meaning unavoidable. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. I watched her expression change instead. First confusion, then a polite smile, as if this were a misunderstanding. Then stillness. Security stepped closer, not aggressively, just present, professional, final. For a moment, she held onto the balloons tighter than necessary, like they might explain something for her, like effort, arriving late, could rewrite timing. It couldn't. I stayed where I was, half hidden by the doorframe, not stepping forward, not calling out. There was nothing left to say that hadn't already been made clear. She turned eventually, walking back the way she came, slower this time, and the quiet held. Word traveled the way it always does. Quietly at first, then with edges. A mutual friend texted me that evening. Something casual on the surface. Hey, heard there was some confusion at the hospital. I kept my reply simple, no confusion, just instructions. He didn't ask again. She apparently told a different version. That she tried, that she showed up. That something went wrong at the front desk. But details matter, and people notice when they don't line up. A nurse mentioning a pre-approved list, a timestamp on a message that didn't quite match her story. Small cracks that didn't need me to widen them. For the first time, I wasn't managing how others saw me, or her. I wasn't explaining, softening, or filling in gaps to protect something that had already failed me. The lease conversation followed, calm and structured. The account was separated without conflict. Even our mutual circle adjusted naturally, not choosing sides out loud, but shifting in quieter ways, invitations changing. Conversations thinning where they used to stretch. What stayed with me wasn't her absence. It was the absence of pressure to excuse it. And maybe that's why it matters. Because sometimes the real consequence isn't what you take from someone. It's what you finally stop giving. Recovery took longer than I expected, but not just physically. There's a different kind of healing that comes when you stop negotiating your own worth. It's quieter, less visible. No one sends flowers for it. But it lasts longer than any apology ever could. In the weeks that followed, my life became simpler. Not easier, not lighter, but clearer. I kept the routines that grounded me. Let go of the ones that only existed to accommodate her. Mornings felt steadier. Conversations felt more honest, even the short ones. I noticed how much energy I used to spend anticipating disappointment, and how peaceful it was to no longer expect it. She reached out once. A message longer than usual, carefully written, full of words that might have mattered earlier. I read it, understood it, and let it sit unanswered. Not out of spite, but because closure doesn't always require a response. The future isn't something I'm rushing toward anymore. I'm building it deliberately, quietly, with people who show up before they're asked. What happened didn't make me colder. It made me precise. And now, I don't confuse presence with promises, because the people who matter never need a second invitation to stay.